I want to introduce to the stage our first speaker. Harris Reynolds has been a fixture. Let's call him a fixture. He's been here for 20 plus years, and he's done an enormous amount of work here in Birmingham. And he's going to talk to us today about how we're all becoming product managers now. Welcome to the stage, Harris Reynolds.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start by saying thanks to Base and thanks to Sloss Tech for this opportunity. We're going to talk today about what the role and job of a developer looks like in the future. Do you guys like this picture I got here? I spent a lot of time working on that picture, as I'm sure you can imagine. I'm going to start just by telling a quick story. About a year ago, I had a very traumatic accident. I was in my backyard. We'd had a tree that had fallen down, and we were just trying to clean up the yard. And so I got my chainsaw out, and I've used a chainsaw quite a lot. But I'm just cutting up all these branches and trying to get the yard cleaned up. And I was literally on the last cut with my chainsaw, and I had an accident and it hit my foot. This was again, it was very traumatic. I got to ride in an ambulance for the first time. That's something I would not wish on anyone, but I had to come down here to UAB, to the trauma center, and I got it all fixed up. But there was a lot of rehab and just a lot of challenges. Well, now, hey, praise God, and thank you for all the doctors. My foot is doing a lot better, a lot better. But the bottom of my foot, I don't have any feeling on the bottom of my foot. And it turns out that that's kind of important for some things you might want to do. There's the joke about the guys that are in the woods and they're in bear country, and the guy's like, what are we gonna do if we see a bear? I can't outrun a bear. And his buddy, who's maybe not much of a buddy, says, "Oh, I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you." So if I'm faced for the bear, you're gonna outrun me, and I'm gonna have to just figure it out because I can't run anymore. But the first point that I want to make today is whatever your reality is, you need to embrace it. Like this is true for anyone, developer, whatever. My new reality is I can't run. Now, I'm not a professional runner. I actually don't like to run a lot unless someone is actually chasing me. So it doesn't impact me a lot, but that's a new reality. I just have to kind of face it. I have to deal with it. And it does impact some of the things that I might want to do. Well, things have changed a lot. Well, first off, things have been changing for developers like for the past 25 years. So change is normal, but they have changed a lot in the past year. And so that's a big point of the talk. But whatever your reality is, just face it. Just face it. We can adapt, and we're going to do some talk at the end about how to embrace this reality. But just embrace the reality. It's much better than sticking your hand in the sand and then getting your foot taken off and experiencing something bad later. So I got to figure out this mic. So quick bit about me. I studied accounting and computer science at Auburn. So I'm kind of a business guy, but also a developer of computer. I put up here Sun Certified Java Programmer. I took that exam in 2000. I'm glad I got some chuckles on that. Anyone who's a developer is like, congratulations, you took a test and you passed it. But I only put that up there because I've been doing this a long time. Like I've been doing this for 25 years. I helped start Shipped in 2014, helped start Landing, and worked for several startups in town. And currently, I'm running Nimble Labs. It's my own company, and we try to help people figure out how to get leverage from AI. So, bit about me. But I'm one of the good guys. Like I'm an actual developer. So if I'm telling you, about some things that you need to do, these are things that I'm actually doing quite a bit myself. Okay, let's have a quick roadmap about where we're going. So the way I think about AI and how it's been changing and how development has gone for the past, 2.5 decades, code has been expensive. And it takes time to generate it. It still takes some time to do it. But now code is cheap. It's actually pretty cheap. And it can be developed really, really fast. So we'll talk a little bit about this first phase, and then obviously we'll spend a lot of time talking about the next phase. Developers need to adapt. Guys, like I spent a lot of my career just killing it on that keyboard, banging out code, writing code, but I don't write code anymore. So developers need to adapt, and I think that we can. I think there's still going to be a lot of demand for people like us, and that's what the last part of the talk is about. There's hope. There's hope for humanity, even though if we're not careful, like a lot of this AI stuff turns into like doom and gloom. We're like, man, let's just go off grid and just go grow all of our own food. If we're not careful, that's how we feel sometimes. I'm going to talk a little bit about just my experience. My first full-time job, I'd studied accounting, so I was interviewing with all these accounting firms. And I took my first full-time job with a company named Price Waterhouse. It's now PwC. But I took that job because these guys offered me money, and they were going to go send me for 3 months down to Tampa to learn programming. And I was like, that sounds fun. Tells you that I may not like really know what fun is, but that sounded fun to me. So I went down to Tampa and I learned COBOL. COBOL, anyone? I was like we were the last class that actually did COBOL. That's super. COBOL's super retro. But we learned C and then we learned Power Builder, and that's why I took the job. Like, man, I had studied accounting, but I thought it'd be fun to learn computers, so that's what I did. I'm going to talk just a little bit about money. Money's like we're like, oh, let's talk about money. Like, how much do you make? Like don't go to talk how far and lead with like how much do you make? But that first job that I got, they paid me $46,000. I thought I was like, I'm pretty good, This was late '90s. But by 2002, I got my first full-time job, and they offered me $90,000. It's twice as much I'd started with. And so I'm talking to my wife on the phone. I'm like, hey, they offered me $90,000. Should I tell them that's way too much? And we're like, nah, I'll take the job. But throughout my career, like developers have been in high demand and there's been low supply. So it's been good for developers because, we could get good salaries. That's part of the code is expensive thesis here. I want to talk quick a little bit about my experience with Shipped. Shipped started in 2014, but we really started to figure it out in 2015. In early 2015, this is a text thread with me and Bill Smith. We're trying to pre-sale 1,000 memberships to get people to like figure out, do we actually have an idea that people care about? Because we had tried some other ideas at Shipped that absolutely didn't work. Michael was around for some of that. But Bill's texting me, he's like, man, we just hit 50 people have signed up for this thing. And then I'm like, oh, we hit 74, and Bill's like 78. And then eventually this picture on the next to it here is we hit 1,000. 1,000 people gave us money to, do grocery delivery. Now look, this platform didn't even exist, okay? This text thread is in February, and we didn't actually have a product or a platform. Now we had started to build it some, but we didn't have anything. So we built the Shipped MVP from January to March timeframe. We released it in early April. Okay, and a lot of times this is kind of the old paradigm for building software. There's these three things. You can have it to be good, you can have it to be cheap, or you can have it be fast, and then you got to just pick two of those. Well, first off, it's always got to be good, right? Like, if the software doesn't actually work, like, let's just go home or let's just go to the beach. So it has to be good, but there's a lot of tension on the price. Like, can we do it fast or are we going to try to do it cheap? Well, with Shipped, we had to do it fast. We had to ship this product in 3 months. People had paid us money, and at some point, they were going to expect us to deliver. So we built an MVP in 3 months, and that was a good amount. That was a good amount of work. Built mobile app, shopper app, custom app. There's back-end platform. We had to figure out how to get every product that's in the go to the grocery store and start walking down the aisles and just think, oh man, how many products, products are in here? Well, we had to get that whole product in a database and a catalog. So it took some time, but we were able to do it. We were able to do it because we were able to hire developers and, build a small team and, get out there and make it happen. But there's always tension on, the speed that you can do it and the cost that it costs to do it. So, man, my whole career, I mentioned before, writing a lot of code, managing developers who also write a lot of code, and like the reality. I talked at the beginning about reality, is there has just been this kind of massive, massive shift in what it means to build software. Really, really, just very, very recently. Um, Figure out how to use this guy at some point. I'm just going to throw up a quick AI coding timeline. Can you guys believe it that ChatGPT was released just a little over 3 years ago, about 3.5 years ago? I remember when ChatGPT first came out, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. It was a little bit of a toy when it first came out, but it's gotten better and better and better. First when ChatGPT was helping you code, you just had to like copy and paste. It was a very clunky experience for at least for building software. Well, eventually this tool called Cursor comes out in the 2023, 2024 timeframe. I started using it in 2024, about exactly 2 years ago, and this thing was amazing. Like, I literally, I'm like writing code and like it's like suggesting this big chunk of code. And I was like, that's literally exactly what I want it to write. It felt like it was reading my mind. And so, there's like, man, this thing's going to help me quite a lot. I don't have to type all this code in here. Claude Code is just a little over a year and a half old. It came out in February 2025. I didn't start using it till about a year ago. I'd been using Cursor for about a year, and then about a year ago, I started using Claude Code. I'm like, pretty good. But I was still like a lot of times I'm like, come on, bro. Like you can do better than that. And I struggled with the tool a little bit. And, now I've done this for a very long time, so I had a lot of skill and knew what should be happening. And Claude Code, it was good, but it wasn't great. There's another little shift that happened kind of at the end of last year, beginning of this year. The models finally started to get really, really good with Opus 4.5. Now it's 4.6, 4.7, 4.8. Then they released this Mythos, Fable stuff. Like the models are getting really, really good. And it can, it's very good at generating code now. I love this slide. The hottest new programming language is English. This guy, Andre Karpathy, he works for OpenAI. He's a big AI guy. He actually tweeted this back in 2023. That was kind of early for him to tweet that. But when he tweeted this and I saw it, I was like, that's funny, but it's actually becoming true. Like my first programming language was Java. Shout out Sun Certified Java Programmer. But my first programming was Java, and I spent a lot of time learning like all of these languages, and that was part of the skill that I could offer to employers and to companies. But anymore, if you can describe it in English, then AI can build it for you. So I mentioned the tension, especially between the cost and the time. And I think that tension is starting to evaporate. I remember when I first heard this. I heard a developer on my team was talking about this and talking about how, well, do you want it fast or do you want it, to actually be good? And I was like, we kind of need both. Like it needs to be good and it needs to be fast, but now it's also pretty cheap. I spend $140 on AI tools. I spend $100 a month on Claude Code. $20. I give OpenAI $20 and Google $20. But that's like dirt cheap. And I'm sitting here and I'm working on some tools and I can tell you a little bit about some of the recent projects that I've been working on. But like I've been doing this for a long time, and like I'm looking at the code and I'm like, it's pretty good. And so really, a lot of these trade-offs are just starting to completely, completely evaporate. Now you can get all three. It can be good, it can be cheap, and it can be fast. I think this cheap thing is an interesting thing to click on for just a little bit. These AI tools now, like they're cheap. And I know $100 a month might sound expensive, but when you compare it to a developer salary, it's like it's literally dirt cheap. I do think the price of these coding tools is going to eventually go up. Eventually, these companies like Anthropic, they're going to have to make money. They're going to have to be viable long term, and for them to do that, I think they're going to have to charge money. I still predict that it's going to be a lot less than a developer salary. Developer salary in Birmingham, and I know it changes a lot different parts of the country, but to get a good developer in Birmingham, you guys spend somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000. And I really believe that AI, even as it gets more expensive, is going to be a lot cheaper than that. So now we got this new set of problems. Okay, like if the AI can just code this thing up, like there's going to be new bottlenecks. And so one of the new bottlenecks is just product, just figuring out like what exactly do we want to build. And so one of the questions we've got to ask now is how fast can you describe what you actually want? I'm working with a company now, and we've got an old legacy system, and we're turning into a new modern system. But the old system, like it's super old, like not quite COBOL old, but it's like it's pretty old. And so figuring out how to port that over is a lot of work. But a lot of the work is just how fast can we actually describe what the old system does, and then how detailed can you describe what you want? One analogy that I saw recently is, you go to a restaurant and you order fish. What are you gonna get? You might get a fillet of fish sandwich from McDonald's. Like that's fish. Or you might get sushi. Anyone like sushi? I love, I love sushi. But we got to give detail. Now, this has always been a problem, giving detailed instructions about what you want to build. But it's just being highlighted now as a new bottleneck and a new problem that we need to solve. And then the other thing too is now we've got this big pile of code and we got to figure out what to do with it. First off, we got to figure out, does it actually work? And can we review all of this code and handle the volume of all this new code that's coming in the system? So how fast can you review all of these merge requests or pull requests that are coming in? How can we test all of this code? I've got a little hint down here. AI can help you with all of that. AI is real, like in the old days, we would talk about test coverage. And we're like, how much test coverage is good? 30%. Like if someone said like anything over 50%, you're like, you're just joking. Like it's just a lot of work to write tests for all of your code. Well, anymore, if code is cheap and if code is fast, then we should be able to write a pretty robust test suite to test all that code. And so I kind of see the developer of the future spending time on these two problems. As developers, we need to start to get better at figuring out like what are we gonna. In the old days, like we could just kind of sit there and someone would hand us a product spec or a set of requirements, and we'd just kind of go off into our little corner and build the code. But the developer of the future, I think, is going to become more of a product manager. I went for a long time in my career. I had no idea what a product person was. I was like, product? Like, what do those guys do? They're just like some expensive person, like, sits around and tells us what to do. But great product people are actually pretty important. They're the person who are generally great communicators. And the big thing is they're talking to all the stakeholders. They're talking to the customers. They're talking to management. They're talking with developers to figure out exactly what they're going to build. And I think it's important for us as developers to think about like what makes a great product person. They're good at communicating and figuring out what to build, and also just being empathetic to the different people in their system. any of you guys coders in here, and you're like coding something, and you're like, you tell Claude Code, some pretty good work. That's some pretty good work. Thank you for that work. I do this sometimes. It's kind of funny. Like literally just a computer. It's literally just a computer. Um, but I put the slide up there, because I think it is good to be empathetic. Now, look, I'm not saying you need to tell Claude Code thank you or ChatGPT thank you, but I do think that being empathetic and thinking about the people in the ecosystem is a really good thing. There's a guy named Steve Yegi. He worked at Amazon for a long time. He worked at Google for a long time. He wrote an essay called "Done and Gets Things Smart." That was a play on, that was a play and a little kind of switch on something that a guy named Joel Spolsky said. Joel Spolsky was the guy who started Stack Overflow, if you remember him at all. But he wrote this awesome essay about hiring software engineers. And he's like, software engineers got to be two things. They got to be smart and they've got to get things done. Okay. If you're smart, but you don't get anything done, you're like the PhD guy that just wants to talk all the time. He's like, let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. So you can be smart and not get anything done. That's pretty bad. But then the other is actually a little bit worse. What if you get a bunch of stuff done, but you don't actually know what you're doing? Like you're literally shoving bugs into the system as fast as the other guys over there trying to shovel them out. And so that's not good. So, we need people that are like, and I'm going to share some things at the end of stuff that's just always true. And companies are always going to want people who are smart and gets things done. Okay, I know that's true. I believe that's true. But this Steve Yeager guy, he actually wrote this very long essay. Look it up, and man, if you get all the way through to the end of it, it's pretty amazing. But he wrote this essay that said, "Done gets things smart." And like he wrote this back in the 2000s. But a great developer, in the old days like 2024. would get his work done pretty fast. But then when he was done, he didn't have like anything else to do. So he would just spend time like getting the system smarter. That first job when I was at Price Waterhouse, we were in that training program. And half the class was American, US, and then half the class was Japanese. We're all like 30 people of us in this class together. They give us different assignments, and these different assignments, like they had different levels of difficulty. There's one guy. His name was Hidehiko, and like all of us would be working like late into the evening. Every day at 5 o'clock, his desk was empty. It was perfectly neat and clean. And he was gone. He was out of there. He was always doing all the hardest stuff. This guy he was always done. And I think any more developers, like you should have more time. It takes less time to code. If nothing else, just because like, hey, I can type way faster. But we can spend time like just getting the system smart and making the system better, writing tests, and things like that. So I want to talk just real quick about how developers are definitely still in demand. Now, it's not as easy to get jobs in development as it may have used to have been, but developers are still in demand. I spoke with Patrick Sullivan yesterday. He's the CTO of Link, and he was like one of the very first developers that I hired at Shipt. He was the mobile developer that helped create the customer app and the shopper app and all that stuff. This guy was really smart, really good. He's the CTO of Link right now. Link is like a pretty poppin' company startup. They raised $20 million at an $80 million valuation in the past year. But I asked him, I was like, "Are you still hiring developers?" He's like, "Yeah, no, we totally are." I was like, "What kind of developers are you looking for?" The metric that he gave us is the only thing that they do, because they don't like programming languages don't matter anymore. If you love your programming language, like bless you, but it literally doesn't matter anymore. So I was asking them, like, what do you look for? How do you hire developers? The only thing that they do is they ask people that already work at their company, who's the smartest person that you've ever worked with, and they just try to go hire that person. Okay. But developers and really just the whole tech ecosystem so far, like AI, I don't want to say it's creating more work, but there's still just a ton of opportunity in the technology space. But you do have to adapt. If you want to get a job as a developer and you want to go code for 8 hours a day, um, maybe you go work for the government. Maybe you go work for the government. No offense to anyone who works for the government. Michael actually works for the government. I asked him, I was like, you using AI? And he's like, no, we're not allowed to touch it. It's pretty funny. But developers are still in demand. So I want to close out the talk with just some hope. Like I've read a lot of these papers, and these papers are pretty interesting, talking about what the world's going to look like in 20 years. Like if you're not careful, you read these papers about like what life's going to look like in 20 years, and it's like, man, like we're only like 3 years, 3.5 years into this AI thing. What's it going to look like in 20 years? Well, yeah, I don't know, but I just want to give us a little bit of hope, and a lot of this is stuff that I've touched on already, but I just really want you to lean in to this just a little bit. First off, I believe as human beings, we're made to be adaptable. We're literally able to adapt to change. We've had to do that throughout just human history. I mentioned that developers, that's kind of like not new for us. Okay, I started coding back in late 90s, early 2000s. Okay, and technology has just made this massive shift. I remember going to a talk in the 2000s about some guy was talking about Git, and I was like, what a boring talk. I'm not interested in Git. But it turned out to be pretty interesting and powerful technology. And so I learned that. And one of my best skills, I'm not bragging, but this is just one of my best skills. I just know how to learn stuff. And there is a lot of power in being able to learn stuff and adapt to change. Guys, we're made to be creative. We are made to be creative. Now, one of the reasons I'm kind of tired of coding. I've been doing it for a long time. I'm kind of loving this new time where I don't have to code a lot because now I can spend time thinking of creative ideas. And I think, I grew up thinking, what does it mean to be creative? Like I grew up thinking that to be creative, that meant you had to be like some kind of artist and you should be able to draw really good or paint really good. Well, being creative, we had to come up with creative solutions. How did we even come up with the whole product catalog for Shipped? Well, we had some creative ideas for how to do that. So start thinking about just how do I be more creative? Super, super valuable. That's always in vogue, always in fashion. Communication. My wife, man, I got married. I didn't have any idea what I was doing. I would say something. My wife was like, "What are you talking about?" You got to learn how to communicate, obviously, in any relationship. But in business, it's super important. Like the problems that you're solving, like the details matter. And a lot of times as developers, we don't like to be, we don't like to have to communicate. We kind of like to just be told what to do, go in our little corner and do it. Communication, super, super important. Always, always valuable. And this has always been important. The last slide here is we need to just be pursuing excellence. The church that I go to has several values. One of them is choose joy, just be a joyful, happy person. And one of the values at this church is pursue excellence. Just do a good job and just be proud of the work that you're doing and just pursuing excellence. I thought about having this slide be a hard worker. Just be a hard worker. Companies are always going to want to hire smart people who get things done and who are creative. And that's my advice to developers. There's a ton of work to do. And I just want to encourage all of you to keep pursuing excellence, keep being creative, and keep figuring out ways to add value. So that is my talk. And thank you very much.
Give it up for Harris Reynolds. Thanks, man. Really appreciate it.